Okay, so in Broken Trust, you explore the concept of toxic leadership within
Mhm.
churches, which goes back to the whole authority thing, which is interesting because, I think that's why authorities promote that and push that so much on people is because then it cuts everyone off at the knees. You're no longer able to question them because they're your authority, right? Can you tell
Mhm.
us what toxic faith is? Maybe define that and talk about it a little bit. And also spiritual abuse. And how do we know? How does someone know that that's what they're experiencing in their religious environment? Because I don't think it's always that obvious.
Sure, sure. Well, I think toxic faith and spiritual abuse are two distinct things. So I do like to make that delineation. First, with toxic faith, it's whenever you're being encouraged to please God, that you need to do something in order for you to please God and for Him to accept you. And so once you believe that and you're every day you're thinking, okay, what do I need to do? Should I pray? Should I pray for 15 minutes? Maybe I should pray for 20 minutes. And that's what God is, you're
Yeah.
you're always questioning yourself, you're always doubting yourself, wondering if what you're doing is enough to please God and receive his blessing. So it puts all kinds of pressure on you to perform in order to please him. And then as a result, of course, because you're always going to fail, you're always doubting yourself, it creates all kinds of guilt and shame. And unfortunately, none of that brings you any closer to God. So that's what toxic faith is. And you hear it oftentimes in the things that we hear people say in church, or even to yourself, like you should always do this, or God wants you to do this, or you have to do that. It reminded me of years ago, I wrote this piece, this kind of a tract on how to find God's will. And I was pretty pleased with it, being arrogant young man that I was. And so I took it to one of the elders in my church and I said, hey, I wrote this on how to find God's will. I'd appreciate your input, thinking that he would give me all kinds of great input. And he came back and he said, well, Remy, it's good, but you use the word must a lot. And I
Mm,
said, what do you mean? Yeah, what's wrong with that? He said, well, it sounds heavy handed, like this is the only way you can find God's will is what you're saying. And being the clueless young man that I was, I said, well, yeah, you have to do these things. These are things you have to do to know God's will. So I totally dismissed his input. And it took me probably 20 years to go, oh, that's what he was talking about. It's this
yeah.
attitude of there's a certain way to do everything. And if you don't, hit these notches on the list, you're not going to be able to find God's will. You're not going to be able to please God. So that's what toxic faith looks like. I think
Yeah.
spiritual abuse is a little bit different in that people take toxic faith and they weaponize it against people to manipulate people and to control people to get them to do what they want them to do so they can have their kingdom and have people serving them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the distinction between those two things.